no help in sight, until a human battlecruiser roared out of the void. 2 weeks later, the Iron Covenant was ready to depart. The repairs were complete. New armor plating covered the damaged sections and the crew had their orders. They were needed elsewhere. The galaxy was a big place and one battlecruiser could only be in one location at a time. Yuna and Ji-Wan stood with Commander Thalos on the observation deck, watching the human ship prepare to leave. The Covenant's engines began to glow, a soft blue light that grew brighter as power built up. "I wish they could stay," Thalos said. His forearms were crossed, a gesture of respect among his people. "I would sleep better knowing they were nearby." "They have other people to protect," Ji-Wan said. He had spent every spare moment with the human crew, learning everything he could about their ships, their tactics, their way of thinking. He had written a full report for the Coalition Council. In it, he recommended immediate and close ties with humanity. The Covenant's engines flared. The massive ship began to move, slow at first, then faster. It aligned with the nearest jump point, and in a flash of twisted light it was gone. The space where it had been was suddenly empty and cold. Talon's Edge station felt smaller after they left. 3 months passed. Life returned to something like normal. The station's residents went back to their jobs, their families, their routines. But things had changed. People walked a little taller. They knew that somewhere out there someone was watching over them. Yuna kept her promise. She applied to the Coalition Defense Academy and was accepted. Her test scores were excellent, but what got her in was her recommendation letter from Captain Do-hyun. He had written that she showed the qualities of someone who would fight for others, not for glory, but because it was right. That meant everything to the Academy's selection board. Ji-Wan's report caused ripples throughout the coalition. The council debated for weeks. Some members feared humanity's military power. Others saw opportunity. Finally, Councillor Aylin stood before the full council and gave a speech that would be remembered for generations. "I have seen what our peace costs," she said. "I have seen it paid in the blood of those willing to fight when we are not. The humans ask nothing from us. They don't demand territory or resources. They simply stand in the dark and keep watch. I believe we should extend our hand in friendship. Not because we need them, though we do, but because they deserve to know they're not alone anymore." The vote was close, but it passed. The coalition sent an official envoy to Earth with an offer of alliance. The response from Earth took weeks. The human governments debated among themselves. Trust did not come easily to a species that had been betrayed so many times in its own history. But the encounter at Talon's Edge had proven something important. There were good people in the galaxy, people worth standing beside. Earth accepted the alliance with one condition. Humanity would not soften its military. The galaxy needed protectors, and humans knew how to do that job. The coalition agreed. They didn't want humanity to change. They wanted exactly what humanity already was. 5 years later, Yuna stood on the bridge of the Iron Covenant wearing the uniform of a coalition liaison officer. It felt strange being back on the ship that had saved her life. But it felt right too. Captain Do-hyun looked older now. More gray in his hair, more lines around his eyes. But his voice was still steady and calm as he gave orders to his crew. Lieutenant Minji had been promoted to commander. Chief Sunho was still at his weapons station, as reliable as the guns he controlled. The Covenant had been upgraded with coalition technology. Better shields, more efficient reactors, advanced sensors. In return, the coalition had learned from human weapons design. The alliance was working. The last 5 years had brought unprecedented peace to the outer verge. Raider attacks had dropped by 80%. The Vrakoth had retreated to their home systems, broken and wary. Other aggressive species thought twice before attacking colonies. Word had spread. Touch the innocent and the humans will come. And humans don't lose. Yuna had seen it firsthand. She had been there when the Covenant responded to 3 different distress calls. Each time, the pirates or raiders had the same reaction when they saw the human warship appear. Some fought and died, most ran. A few surrendered immediately, knowing what happened to those who fought humans and lost. On this day, Yuna was reviewing supply reports when the alarm sounded. She looked up sharply. "Red alert. All hands to battle stations. What is it?" she asked Minji. "Distress signal." Minji's fingers flew over her controls. "Mining colony in the Theta sector. They're under attack by unknown hostiles. Heavy weapons fire. They're requesting immediate assistance." Captain Do-Yun was already in his command chair. How far? 4 hours at maximum FTL. Take us there. Full speed. Do-Hyun opened the ship-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. We have a distress call. People need help. No one else is close enough to respond. It's just us. So we're going to do what we do best. We're going to show them that no one is ever truly alone. Prepare for combat. Do-Hyun out. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. This was their purpose. This was what they trained for, fought for, bled for. Someone out there needed help and they were going to answer. Yuna strapped into her station. 5 years ago, she had been a terrified civilian watching her station die. Now she was part of the solution. Part of the crew that rushed toward danger instead of away from it. The Covenant jumped to FTL. 4 hours to the mining colony. 4 hours to find out who was attacking and why. 4 hours to prepare for battle. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment and thought of all the people on that colony. They were probably scared. Probably thought they were going to die. Probably wondered if help would come in time. But help was coming. Help was always coming now. Because humanity had made a promise. When you call for help, we will answer. When you're surrounded by darkness, we will be your light. When you have no one left to turn to, we will stand beside you. The Covenant dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Theta sector. Sensors immediately lit up with contacts. The mining colony was there, shields failing, under heavy bombardment from 6 warships of unknown design. Battle stations, Captain Do-Hyun said calmly. Weapons hot. Prepare to engage. The human battlecruiser roared forward, engines burning bright. The attacking ships noticed them and hesitated. They had heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories by now. Do-Hyun opened a channel to the colony. This is Captain Do-Hyun of the human naval ship Iron Covenant. Hold on, we're here now. You're going to be okay. On the colony, hundreds of people heard those words and felt hope bloom in their chests. Help had come. Against all odds, in their darkest moment, someone had answered their call. Yuna watched Captain Do-Hyun's face. He looked tired. He always looked tired. How many times had he done this? How many colonies had he saved? How many battles had he fought? But there was something else in his expression too. Determination. Purpose. The absolute certainty that what he was doing mattered. The attacking ships opened fire on the Covenant. Energy beams and missiles filled space. The battle was beginning. Do-Hyun smiled slightly. Not from joy, but from satisfaction. This was what they did. This was who they were. All weapons, he said. Fire at will. Let's show them what happens when you prey on the weak. The Iron Covenant's guns spoke. Railguns thundered. Missiles streaked through the void. The human warship charged into battle like an ancient knight riding to rescue the helpless. Yuna gripped her station controls. She was terrified. She was exhilarated. She was exactly where she needed to be, because 5 years ago she had learned an important lesson. The galaxy was a dangerous place. Darkness was always waiting. Evil existed and it was hungry, but there were those who stood against it. There were those who fought not for glory or wealth, but because someone had to. There were those who rushed toward danger because running away meant letting innocent people die. Humanity had taught her that lesson. And now she was part of it. The battle raged. The Covenant took hits but kept fighting. The attacking ships fell one by one, destroyed or driven off. And on the mining colony, people who thought they were going to die watched in amazement as the human battlecruiser saved them. Just like it had saved Talon's Edge. Just like it had saved dozens of other colonies and stations and ships. They had called for help. And humanity had answered. Because that's what humans did. When there was no help in sight. When darkness closed in, when all hope seemed lost, a human battlecruiser would roar out of the void and say the words everyone needed to hear. No help in sight. Until a human battlecruiser roared out of the void. 2 days after the battle, the Iron Covenant limped into Talon's Edge Station's repair dock. The battlecruiser looked like it had been through hell. Scorch marks covered its hull. Whole sections were exposed to space where armor had been blasted away. Emergency patches sealed the larger breaches, but anyone could see the ship was badly damaged. Yuna stood with hundreds of other station residents in the main docking bay. They waited in silence as the human crew began to disembark. She didn't know what to expect. Heroes, maybe. Warriors who would look larger than life. The first humans who came through the airlock looked tired. Their uniforms were clean but worn. Some had bandages. One man walked with a limp. They carried themselves with a quiet dignity, not like conquerors but like workers finishing a long shift. Captain Do-hyun was near the front. He was shorter than Yuna expected, maybe in his early 40s with lines around his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. He didn't smile. He just nodded politely as Commander Thalos approached. "Captain Do-hyun," Thalos said, his forearms spread wide in the Mirian gesture of deepest gratitude. "You saved 3,000 lives. The Mirian Coalition owes you a debt we can never repay." Do-hyun's expression softened slightly. "We did what anyone should do, Commander. You don't owe us anything," but Thalos insisted. He organized a formal reception in the station's largest gathering hall. Crew members from the Covenant mingled with station residents. Food was shared. Stories were exchanged. The atmosphere should have been joyful, but Yuna noticed something odd. The humans seemed uncomfortable with the attention. They answered questions politely but didn't boast or brag. They looked like people who wanted to finish their drinks and get back to work. Yuna found herself standing next to a human woman in a medical uniform. The name on her uniform read, Dr. Sulgi. She was younger than Do-hyun, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and tired hands. "Thank you for what you did," Yuna said. "I thought we were going to die." Sulgi smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad we got there in time. Can I ask you something?" Yuna hesitated. "How many people did you lose in the battle?" 43 dead. 72 wounded, though most of them will recover." Yuna felt sick. "That many? I'm so sorry." Sulgi looked confused. "Those are light casualties for an engagement that size." "Light?" Yuna couldn't believe what she was hearing. 43 people died. "Yes." Sulgi's expression was patient. "In the Battle of Proxima, we lost 300. In the Kepler raids, over 800. This was a relatively clean fight." Yuna realized the doctor was serious. "How long has your ship been in service?" 15 years. "And how many battles have you fought?" Sulgi thought for a moment. "Major engagements?" 68. "If you count smaller actions and skirmishes, maybe 200. The number hit Yuna like a physical blow. 68 major battles in 15 years. The Mirian Coalition had fought 3 wars in the last 2 centuries. 3. Across the hall, Jiwon was having a similar conversation with Lieutenant Minji. He had spent the last 2 days analyzing the battle recordings, trying to understand what he had witnessed. "Your railguns," he said. "The recoil from firing at those velocities should have torn your ship apart. How do you compensate for the physics?" Minji smiled slightly. "We use gravitic dampeners to absorb the recoil stress. And we overbuilt the ship's structure. Human ships are built to take punishment. And your missiles. They adapted mid-flight. I've never seen targeting computers that sophisticated. We've had a long time to develop our weapons technology." Minji's smile faded. "A very long time." That night, Jiwon couldn't sleep. He went to the station's data center and requested access to the Coalition's files on humanity. With Do-hyun's permission, he also accessed the Iron Covenant's public database. What he found kept him awake until morning. Earth's history was a nightmare. 10,000 years of recorded warfare. The humans had fought with stones, then bronze, then iron, then steel. They had invented gunpowder and used it to kill each other more efficiently. They had split the atom and immediately turned it into a weapon. They had nearly destroyed themselves dozens of times and somehow kept surviving. The images were hard to look at. Ancient battles where thousands died in a single day. Cities reduced to ash. Entire populations wiped out. And through it all, humanity kept fighting, kept adapting, kept learning how to kill better and faster. When humans finally reached space, they brought all that knowledge with them. Their first ships were armed. Their first colonies were fortified. They expected war because war was all they had ever known. And yet, Jiwon thought, they came to save us. They risked their lives for people they had never met. The next day, a Mirian Coalition diplomatic ship arrived. Counselor Aylin disembarked with her staff, here to investigate the incident and establish formal contact with the human vessel. She was an elegant Miran, decorated with honors and known for her wisdom. She had negotiated 3 separate peace treaties in her career. She met with Captain Do-hyun in private. Yuna only heard about the conversation later from Jiwon, who heard it from a junior officer who had been standing outside the room. "You fight too well," Aylin had said. "Your species is dangerous." Do-hyun's response was quiet but firm. "We fight well because we've had to. We fight because no one else will." Your coalition built its peace on the assumption that everyone shares your values. But the Vrakoth don't. The Kresh slavers don't. The Ravager clans don't. Someone has to stand in the gap between civilization and chaos. That's what we do. But at what cost? Aelin asked. How many lives have you sacrificed? How many of your people have died in battles that weren't even your fights? Too many, Do-hyun admitted. But that's the price of peace. Someone has to pay it. We decided a long time ago that we'd rather pay it ourselves than watch innocent people suffer. Aelin left the meeting shaken. She had spent her life building peace through diplomacy and treaties. The idea that peace required constant vigilance and military strength went against everything she believed. And yet the Vrakoth had ignored all treaties. They had come to take what they wanted. Only violence had stopped them. That evening, Yuna found Captain Do-hyun alone on the station's observation deck. He stood at the wide window looking out at the stars. The Iron Covenant floated nearby, work crews swarming over it with repair equipment. Captain, Yuna approached carefully. Do you have a moment? He turned and nodded. Of course, I wanted to thank you properly. You saved my life. You saved everyone here. Do-hyun shook his head slightly. We just did our job. But why? Yuna asked. You don't know us. We're not your people. Your ship could have been destroyed. Why risk everything for strangers? Do-hyun was quiet for a long time. Then he said, My grandmother told me a story once. During one of Earth's ancient wars, a soldier was asked why he threw himself on a grenade to save his squad. They weren't even his friends. He had only known them for 2 months. His answer was simple. They were mine to protect. That's how we see it. Once we know you're out here, once we know you need help, you become ours to protect. It doesn't matter if we've never met. It doesn't matter if you're human or not. You needed help and we could give it. That's enough. Yuna felt tears in her eyes. I looked up Earth's history. I saw what your people have been through. All that war, all that suffering, and you still came to save us. Maybe because of that history, Do-hyun said softly. We know what it's like to be helpless. We know what it's like when no help comes. We swore we'd never let that happen to anyone else if we could prevent it. He turned back to the window. We've been alone out here for a long time. It's good to know there are people worth fighting for. Yuna stood beside him looking at the stars. The galaxy suddenly felt smaller and warmer than it had before. Somewhere out there, humanity patrolled the darkness. They fought alone, died alone, asked for nothing in return. They stood in the gap so others could live in peace. She made a decision in that moment. She would apply to the Coalition Defense Academy. She would train, learn, become someone who could stand beside these humans when the next threat came. Because there would be a next threat. There always was. And when it came, Yuna wanted to be ready to answer the call just like they had. No help in sight, until a human battlecruiser roared out of the void. The Vrakoth fleet hit the Iron Covenant like a hammer. Energy beams carved through space from 15 different angles. Missiles came in waves, hundreds of them. Enough firepower to crack a moon. The Covenant's shields flared bright white, bleeding energy as they struggled to absorb the incoming damage. Shield strength at 60%, Lieutenant Minji called out. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white on her controls. Multiple hits on the starboard side. Point defense is holding, but we can't stop them all. Captain Do-hyun watched his tactical display. The Vrakoth were focusing their fire, coordinating their attacks. They had learned from watching their first 5 ships die. They weren't taking chances anymore. A heavy plasma torpedo slipped past the point defense grid. It struck the Covenant's starboard hull and detonated. The ship shuddered. Alarms screamed. Somewhere deep in the vessel, bulkheads automatically sealed to contain the breach. Hull breach on Deck 7, a damage control officer reported. Emergency teams responding. We've got fires in 3 compartments. Seal those sections, Do-hyun ordered. Redirect power from life support in the damaged areas to the shields. Yes, sir. The Covenant was taking a beating, but it wasn't dying. It was built for this. Every plate of armor, every redundant system, every backup power line existed for one purpose: to keep fighting when any sane ship would break apart. Out ahead of the battlecruiser, Ensign Heejin's fighter squadron danced through the chaos. Her fighter was small, barely 15 meters long, but it moved like a thought. Her hands barely touched the controls. After years of training, flying was as natural as breathing. Gold 3 on my wing, she called out. We're going for the command ship. Copy that, Gold Leader. Right behind you. The Vrakoth command ship was huge, twice the size of any other vessel in their fleet. It sat in the center of the formation, directing the attack. Hijin could see its communication arrays glowing with active transmissions. Take out the command ship and the whole fleet would fall into chaos. All Gold Squadron fighters follow my lead. We're going in. 12 fighters accelerated, their engines burning bright blue. The Vrakoth point defense systems opened up immediately. Laser fire filled space like rain. 2 of Hyejin's fighters broke off, drawing fire away from the main group. The rest pushed through. A laser caught Gold 7. The fighter exploded in silence, there one moment and gone the next. Hyejin's jaw tightened. She knew that pilot. They had trained together, eaten meals together, shared dreams about seeing Earth again someday. Gold 7 is down, someone said on the comm. I know, Hyejin said. Keep moving. Make it count. They reached the command ship. Hyejin armed her missiles and targeted the massive vessel's engine clusters, not the main engines. Those were too well protected. But the maneuvering thrusters, the small engines that let something that size turn and dodge, those were vulnerable, missiles away. 10 fighters released their payloads at once. 40 missiles, each one guided by computers that thought faster than any living mind. The Vrakoth tried to shoot them down, but there were too many coming too fast. The missiles hit home. Explosions rippled across the command ship's stern. One maneuvering thruster went dark. Then another. Then a third. The massive vessel began to drift, its course no longer under full control. Good hit, Gold Squadron. Captain Do-hyun's voice came over their comms. Return to the Covenant. We're going to finish this. Hyejin pulled her fighter around, her remaining squadron following. As they flew back toward the Battlecruiser, she saw the Covenant doing something impossible. It was accelerating. Directly toward the crippled command ship. On Talon's edge station, Jiwan watched in horror. They're going to ram it, he said out loud. The humans are going to ram the command ship. Yuna grabbed his arm. That's insane. The collision will tear both ships apart. I know, Jiwan said, but he couldn't look away. The Iron Covenant wasn't at full speed. Just half thrust. But it was still 3 kilometers of warship moving at thousands of meters per second. The Vrakoth command ship tried to turn, tried to bring its engines around, but without its maneuvering thrusters, it was too slow. The 2 ships collided. Metal screamed against metal. The Covenant's reinforced prow punched through the Vrakoth hull like a spear. The impact sent both vessels spinning. Sparks and debris fountained into space. Alarms howled throughout both ships. On the Covenant's bridge, Do-hyun grabbed his command chair to keep from falling. The lights flickered. Gravity failed for 3 seconds before the systems compensated. Damage report, he ordered. Multiple hull breaches. We've got fires on 6 decks. 2 reactors are offline. But the ship is holding together, sir. Good. Do-hyun opened a ship-wide channel. Master Sergeant Taejin, your show now. Take your Marines and secure that command ship. In the Covenant's armory deck, Master Sergeant Taejin was already moving. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and scarred, with gray in his hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Around him, his Marines grabbed weapons and checked their armor. 40 men and women, the best Earth had to offer. You heard the captain, Taejin said. We're going in. Rules of engagement are simple. Anyone pointing a weapon at you, put them down. Anyone trying to kill civilians, end them. Everyone else gets 1 chance to surrender. 1, clear? Clear, Sergeant. 40 voices responded. They moved toward the breach point where the 2 ships had collided. The area was a nightmare of twisted metal and broken bulkheads. But there was a gap now, a hole punched through both hulls. The Marines activated their mag boots and pushed through into the Vrakoth ship. The Vrakoth were waiting for them. The aliens came in fast, howling war cries, firing energy weapons. They were big creatures covered in scales and natural armor. They looked like they could tear a human apart with their bare hands. The Marines didn't give them the chance. Taejin fired first, his rifle barking 3 times. 3 Vrakoth went down. His Marines spread out, finding cover behind bulkheads and support pillars. They moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. Because they had. Humans didn't fight like other species. Most aliens stood their ground or charged. Humans hunted. They used angles, cover, crossfire. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, always pressing forward. A Vrakoth warrior rushed Taejin with a blade as long as his arm. Taejin shot it twice in the chest, but the creature's natural armor kept it alive. It swung the blade. Taejin ducked, stepped inside its reach, and put 3 rounds through the softer scales under its jaw. The warrior dropped. The Marines pushed deeper into the command ship, deck by deck, corridor by corridor. The Vrakoth fought hard, but they weren't prepared for this. They had never fought humans in close quarters before. They didn't understand how humans fought. In one corridor, 3 Marines got pinned down by heavy fire. Instead of retreating, one of them threw a grenade over the cover, while the other 2 provided suppressing fire. The explosion disoriented the Vrakoth. The Marines advanced before the enemy could recover. 4 more Vrakoth died. Tajin's Marines lost people. A private took an energy beam to the chest and went down. A corporal got caught in an explosion and had to be dragged back by his squad. But the Marines kept pushing forward. They didn't stop. They couldn't stop. That wasn't how humans worked. They reached the command deck. The doors were sealed and reinforced. Tajin planted breaching charges and his team stacked up on either side. Breach in 3, 2, 1. The doors blew inward. Tajin went through first. The Vrakoth commander was there, massive and covered in decorated armor. He held a plasma rifle in one hand and a ceremonial blade in the other. Behind him stood 6 elite guards. "You will die here, human," the commander snarled. "I will take your skull as a trophy." Tajin looked at him. Then he looked at his Marines. "You heard him. He wants to dance." The firefight was short and brutal. The elite guards died in the first 5 seconds. The commander lasted longer. He was fast and his armor was thick. He killed 2 Marines before Tajin got a clear shot. The first bullet cracked the commander's armor. The second went through. The third ended it. Tajin stood over the body, breathing hard. Around him, the command deck was torn apart by weapons fire. But it was over. Covenant actual. This is Tajin. Command ship is secure. Enemy commander is down. Captain Do-hyun's voice came back immediately.
Acknowledged.
"Well done, Sergeant. Hold that position. We're informing the remaining enemy fleet now." Do-hyun opened a channel to the Vrakoth ships. His voice was cold and final. "This is Captain Do-hyun. Your command ship is taken. Your commander is dead. Any ship that continues fighting will be destroyed. Any ship that surrenders will be treated according to the laws of war. You have 60 seconds to decide." There was a long silence. Then, one by one, 4 Vrakoth ships powered down their weapons. 3 others turned and fled into the darkness. The rest were already destroyed or crippled beyond repair. The battle was over. Humanity had won. On Talon's edge, Yuna collapsed against the shelter wall. Around her, people were crying, laughing, hugging each other. They were alive. Against all odds, they had survived. Ji-wan stared at his screens. 20 Vrakoth warships had attacked. The humans had destroyed 10, captured 1, and driven off the rest. 1 battlecruiser. 1 crew. No help in sight. Until a human battlecruiser roared out of the void. Captain. Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the Iron Covenant with his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, his crew worked at their stations in controlled chaos. Screens flickered with data. Warning lights blinked. The ship hummed with power, like a sleeping tiger that had just woken up hungry. 5 Vrakoth ships inbound, Lieutenant Minji announced from her tactical station. Her fingers danced across holographic controls, tracking the enemy's approach. "They're spreading out, trying to flank us. Distance?" Do-hyun asked. His voice was quiet, but everyone on the bridge heard him clearly. 400,000 kilometers and closing. They'll be in weapons range in 90 seconds. Do-hyun nodded slowly. He had been a captain for 12 years. The Iron Covenant had been his ship for 8 of those years. In that time, they had fought pirates, raiders, and worse. They had been alone out here in the deep dark, patrolling the edges of known space. Earth had sent them to explore, to watch, to protect human interests in a galaxy that didn't trust them yet. "Chief Sun-ho," Do-hyun said, "are the railguns ready?" At the weapons station, Chief Warrant Officer Sun-ho looked up. He was older than most of the crew, with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. He had seen things that gave him nightmares, but when he worked his controls, his hands were steady as stone. "All primary batteries charged and ready, Captain. Just give me targets and patience," Do-hyun said. "Let them come closer." On Talon's Edge station, everyone who could access a screen was watching. Yuna stood in the shelter with hundreds of others, staring at the display showing the space battle about to begin. The 5 Vrakoth ships looked huge on the sensors. The human battlecruiser looked bigger, but it was still 1 against 5. "They're going to die trying to save us," someone whispered. Ji-wan watched from the weapons control room. He had pulled up every piece of data he could find on human military ships. There wasn't much. Humans kept their technology secret, but what he could see made his blood run cold. The Covenant's reactor output was double what it should be for a ship that size. Its engine thrust didn't match any known physics model. Either the humans had made a mistake or they knew things the rest of the galaxy didn't. The Vrakoth ships opened fire at 300,000 kilometers. Energy beams lanced through space, bright purple and crackling with power. They hit the Covenant's shields and splashed across them like water on glass. Shields holding at 94%, Minji reported. Minor energy bleed-through, nothing critical. Do-hyun watched the tactical display. The 5 Vrakoth ships were spreading wider now, trying to surround the Covenant from multiple angles. Classic Predator tactics. Overwhelm your prey from all sides, but the Covenant wasn't prey. Target the lead ships, Do-hyun said. Railguns 1 through 6. Full salvo. Fire on my mark. Sunho's fingers moved across his controls. 6 targeting reticles appeared on his screen, locking onto 2 Vrakoth vessels. Locked and ready, the Vrakoth ships came closer. 200,000 kilometers. 150,000. They fired again, their energy beams hitting harder this time. The Covenant's shields dropped to 88%. Do-hyun waited. His crew trusted him. They didn't question. They had learned years ago that their captain knew exactly what he was doing. 100,000 kilometers. Fire. The Iron Covenant's railguns spoke. There was no sound in space, but if there had been, it would have been like thunder splitting the world apart. 6 massive slugs of tungsten carbide alloy launched from the Covenant's guns at 40,000 kilometers per second. At that speed, kinetic energy didn't care about shields. It didn't care about armor. It simply erased whatever it touched. The first Vrakoth ship exploded. One moment it was there. The next it was an expanding cloud of superheated gas and metal fragments. The second ship took 2 slugs to its center mass. Its hull split open like a rotten fruit. Atmosphere vented into space in a crystalline fog. Emergency lights flickered and died. The ship went dark. The 3 remaining Vrakoth vessels broke formation immediately, panic driving them to scatter. They're trying to retreat, Minji said. Don't let them. Do-hyun's voice was ice. Missiles. Bring them down. The Covenant's missile pods opened. Dozens of guided warheads streaked into the black. These weren't dumb weapons. Each missile had its own targeting computer, its own intelligence. They hunted. They adapted. When the Vrakoth ships tried to use countermeasures, the missiles simply adjusted their approach vectors. A 3rd Vrakoth ship died in a ball of nuclear fire. A 4th took a missile to its engine core and went spinning off into the dark, trailing debris and bodies. The 5th ship turned hard and burned its engines at maximum thrust, desperate to escape. It almost made it. Then a final railgun slug punched through its rear quarter and it came apart in slow motion, pieces tumbling through the void. 90 seconds, 5 Vrakoth warships destroyed, 1 human battlecruiser untouched. On Talon's edge, the shelter was absolutely silent. Yuna's mouth hung open. She had never seen anything like it. The Vrakoth were supposed to be terrifying. They had raided colonies for decades. No one could stand against them. The humans had just swatted them aside like insects. Jiwan stared at his sensor logs, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. The math didn't make sense. Those railgun velocities should have torn the Covenant apart from recoil stress. Those missiles had done things that violated every law of ballistics he knew. Either humanity had physics the rest of the galaxy didn't understand, or they were insane enough to build weapons that shouldn't work and use them anyway. On the Vrakoth command ship, the commander was no longer laughing. He watched his 5 ships die and felt something he hadn't felt in many years. Fear. All ships. He snarled into his communication system. Attack formation.
Kill that human, now!
15 Vrakoth warships turned toward the Iron Covenant. This wasn't a probe anymore. This was war. Lieutenant Minji's screen lit up with red warning indicators. Captain, all remaining enemy ships are inbound. They're not holding back this time. Do-hyun nodded. He had expected this. How long until they're in optimal firing range? 3 minutes. Good, charge the main guns. Prepare nuclear-tipped torpedoes, and get our fighters ready to launch. Minji's eyes widened slightly. Fighters, sir? Yes, it's time to show them what happens when you threaten innocent people. Do-hyun's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. It's time to show them what happens when you fight humans. The Vrakoth fleet came on like an avalanche. 15 ships, guns blazing, missiles launching in waves. They had numbers. They had firepower. They had fought and won 100 battles against coalition forces, but they had never fought Earth. The Iron Covenant's engines flared bright blue. The massive battlecruiser rotated on its axis, bringing all its weapons to bear. Deep in its hangar bays, 12 small fighters powered up their engines. Their pilots ran through pre-flight checks, hands steady, hearts pounding. In the lead fighter, Ensign Heejin pulled on her helmet and sealed it. She was young, barely 25, but she had trained her entire life for this. Her hands found the controls like old friends. "Gold Squadron, sound off," she said into her comm. 11 voices responded, one after another. Her squadron. Her family. "Gold Leader to Covenant Actual," Yejin said. "We're ready to launch." Captain Do-hyun's voice came back calm and strong. "Launch when ready, Gold Leader. Make your ancestors proud." The hangar doors opened. Space yawned before them. And 12 human fighters screamed into the black, small and fast and deadly. The Vrakoth came on, confident in their numbers. They had no idea what was about to hit them. Yuna watched it all unfold on her screen. The massive battlecruiser holding its ground. The tiny fighters racing ahead like angry hornets. The Vrakoth fleet charging forward. Energy weapons lighting up the darkness. She had asked for help. She had prayed into the void. And something had answered. Something that knew how to fight. Something that didn't run from danger but ran toward it. Something human. The two fleets collided and the battle truly began. No help in sight, until a human battlecruiser roared out of the void. The alarm screamed through every corridor of Talon's Edge station. Red emergency lights painted the walls in blood-colored shadows. Yuna's hands shook as she typed commands into the reactor control panel. The numbers on her screen kept dropping. Shield power at 60%, 58%, 55%. How much longer can we hold? Her brother Jiwan stood behind her, watching the tactical display on the wall. 20 red dots surrounded their station. 20 warships, each one bigger than anything the station's defenses could handle. "Maybe 20 minutes, Yuna said. Her voice cracked. "Maybe less." Outside the station, in the cold darkness of space, the Vrakoth fleet waited like sharks circling wounded prey. Their ships were ugly things, all sharp angles and rust-colored armor plating. They had come from the deep dark between stars, appearing without warning 2 hours ago. Now they had Talon's Edge trapped. Commander Thalos stood on the station's command deck, his forearms moving across different control panels at once. He was Mirian, an insectoid species known for their honor and dedication. His compound eyes reflected the flashing warning lights. He had sent distress signals to every coalition frequency he could reach. No one had answered. The nearest fleet was 3 days away. The Vrakoth had given them 2 hours to surrender. That time was almost up. "All civilians to the lower decks," Thalos ordered. His voice carried the weight of someone who knew what was coming. "Seal the upper levels. Prepare for boarding." Yuna grabbed her tools and ran. Jiwan was right behind her. They had lived on Talon's Edge for 5 years, ever since leaving Earth to work for the Myrian Coalition. The station was home to 3,000 people from a dozen different species. Scientists, engineers, families. Now they were all going to die, or worse. The Vrakoth were slavers. Everyone knew the stories. They took colonies and stripped them bare. The people they didn't kill, they sold. The Myrian Coalition had treaties, laws, peacekeeping forces. But treaties didn't matter when you were 3 days away from help. Yuna and Jiwan reached the lower deck. Hundreds of people crowded into the reinforced shelters. Children were crying. Parents held them tight. A young Myrian mother clutched her offspring to her chest, all 4 arms wrapped protectively around the small bodies. "We sent the distress signal, right?" someone asked. "Someone will come." No one answered. They all knew the truth. Jiwan pulled Yuna aside. "I'm going back up. The defense batteries need someone to coordinate targeting." "That's suicide," Yuna said. "It's better than waiting down here." Jiwan squeezed her shoulder. "If I can buy you more time, maybe help will come." He was lying. They both knew it. But Yuna nodded anyway, because what else could she do? The station shook. The Vrakoth had opened fire. Yuna heard the deep booming sounds of energy weapons hitting the shields. The lights flickered. Somewhere a pipe burst, steam hissing into the corridor. On the command deck, Thalos watched his shield display drop to 40%, 35%. The Vrakoth weren't even using their full power. They were testing, probing, playing with their food. "Return fire," Thalos ordered. The station's small defense turrets spat out laser fire and missiles. It was like throwing rocks at a mountain. One Vrakoth ship's shield flickered slightly. That was all. The enemy fleet didn't even bother dodging. A communication channel opened. The Vrakoth commander appeared on screen. He was massive, covered in thick scales with teeth like broken glass. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel grinding together. "Your time is up, little station. Surrender now. We will be quick. Resist and we will make you watch each other die slowly." Thalos stood straight, his forearms clasped behind his back. "We are a coalition station. If you attack us, you violate the treaty of..." The Vrakoth commander laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Your coalition is weak. Your treaties are nothing. You have no teeth. Now you will learn what happens to prey that has no predators to protect them." The channel closed. Jiwan reached the weapons control room. 2 other technicians were already there, frantically trying to route more power to the guns. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "Shields at 20%, one of them said. The station shook again, harder this time. The lights went completely dark for 3 seconds before the emergency backup kicked in. 15%. Jiwan looked at the tactical display. The Vrakoth were moving into position. In minutes, they would launch boarding pods. The station's security forces would fight, but there were only 80 of them against thousands of Vrakoth warriors. 10%. Thalos made one last transmission. He sent it on every frequency, every channel, every bandwidth the station could produce. It was a simple message, a plea thrown into the endless dark. "This is Talon's Edge Station. We are under attack. 3,000 civilians. No help in sight. If anyone can hear this, please. We are dying." The words vanished into space at the speed of light, racing toward distant stars that didn't care. 5%. The shields collapsed. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the Vrakoth fleet surged forward. Boarding pods launched from the warships, small missiles filled with soldiers ready to tear through the station's hull. In the shelter, Yuna held her breath. This was it. This was how it ended. Then something changed. Every sensor on the station screamed at once. A massive energy signature had appeared on the edge of the system. Something enormous had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Jiwan stared at his screen. "What is that?" On the command deck, Thalos pulled up the sensor data. His compound eyes went wide. A ship had appeared between Talon's Edge and the Vrakoth fleet. Not just any ship. A battlecruiser. 3 kilometers long, colored like dark steel covered in weapons. It was bigger than any 5 Vrakoth ships combined. The boarding pods stopped launching. The Vrakoth fleet hesitated. "Identify that vessel," Thalos ordered. His communications officer worked frantically at her console. "Sir, the signature is..." "It's human. That's a human warship." Human? Thalos had heard of them. A young species new to space, isolationist. They kept to themselves in their corner of the galaxy. He had never seen one of their ships before. On the battlecruiser's hull, letters glowed in the darkness. HNS Iron Covenant. The Vrakoth commander opened a channel to the human ship. His voice was full of contempt. "This doesn't concern you, human. Leave now or die with them." There was a pause. Then a new voice came over every channel. It was calm, almost cold. "Human. This is Captain Dohyun of the human naval ship Iron Covenant. You will withdraw immediately or you will be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to decide." The Vrakoth commander laughed again. "1 ship against 20? You are brave and stupid." 50 seconds. In the shelter, Yuna listened to the exchange through the station's intercom. Her heart pounded. 1 human ship against 20 Vrakoth warships. It was insane. The Vrakoth commander cut the channel. He opened a line to 5 of his ships. "Kill that human. Show them what happens to fools." 5 Vrakoth warships broke formation and accelerated toward the Iron Covenant. Yuna closed her eyes. She wanted to pray but didn't know who to pray to anymore. Then the human ship opened fire and the stars themselves seemed to scream.